All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us here tonight. If you are just coming from the Flavors of the Archipelago exhibit launch downstairs, welcome back. And if you're just joining us right now, welcome. My name is Dr. Maddie Akel, and I'm a postdoc in the Southeast Asian Archaeology Lab. And very grateful to everyone that's coming here. And we have a really great program for you here tonight. So to get started, I would like to call on Sylvia Forney, the Shirley and Ralph Shapiro Director at the Fowler Museum of UCLA.
Thank you, Maddie, and welcome to the Fowler Museum at UCLA. I'm very happy to see you all this afternoon for this really exciting program. I'm Sylvia Forney. I'm the Shirley and Ralph Shapiro Director of the museum. And this is an event important for us also because it marks kind of a kickstart of what will be a long collaboration with our colleagues downstairs at the Coatsen and a focus on Philippine arts, culture, and many other aspects of these lands and traditions. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the Gabrielino Tongva people as the traditional land caretakers of Tuvangar, the Los Angeles Basin, and Southern Channel Islands. As a land grant institution, we pay our respects to the Onukvatang, the ancestors, the Ahihirom, elders, and the Yuhinkem, our relations past, present, and emerging. Today's event brings together so many things that we care deeply about at the Fowler: art, culture, resilience, and food. We're honored to host this lecture exploring the foodways of Batanes, a remote island groups in the northern Philippines, where the Ivatan people have long adapted to a landscape shaped by powerful typhoons and limited resources. This program invites us to reflect on how food connects us to history, environment, and identity, and how those meanings evolve through contact, exchange, and resilience. This afternoon marks the opening of Flavors of the Archipelago, a photographic exploration of Philippines foodways by Francisco Datar, on view at the A-level hallways of the Fowler in the Coatsen Institute of Archaeology. And I encourage everybody who hasn't been there to spend time with the images, as they offer a beautiful, thoughtful lens on the diverse and dynamic culinary landscape of the Philippines. We're grateful to our partners who made this program possible: the Center for Southeast Asian Studies, the Coatsen Institute of Archaeology, the Philippine Consulate General of Los Angeles, the Office of Senator Lauren Lagarde, the UCLA Rotman Family Institute for Food Studies, and the UCLA Southeast Asian Archaeology Lab. Thank you all for being here and for supporting the ongoing exchange of ideas that define this community. And now I think I'll pass it back to Maddie. Or, yeah. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Can everyone hear me okay? Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. Mic goes there. So thank you for that introduction. I would now like to call on Jason DeLeon, the director of the Coatsen Institute of Archaeology at UCLA.
Hello, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. My name is Jason DeLeon. I am director of the Coatsen Institute of Archaeology, professor of anthropology and Chicano and Central American Studies, and also a former employee of the Fowler Museum many years ago, and a longtime off and on resident as a student here in the Coatsen Institute right below us. It's my great pleasure to be here for this event, to celebrate this amazing work in the Philippines, to really, I think, spending some time talking about community and community engagement, something that the Fowler and the Coatson have both long been committed to. And for us to be able to have another event together now is just a really wonderful opportunity to bring us all together. And I think especially right now in this current political moment when there's so much happening outside and not a lot to celebrate, I'll take any opportunity that I can to be with people in community, to be able to share in both the good and the bad, but just to be together to talk about the wonders of culture and food and and our commitment as academics to engaging with the broader community. And so I'm very, very excited for this talk. And I just will say, the one small cruelty of today's event is the fact that we've already looked at photos of food. Now we're going to hear a talk about food, and we're going to have to wait to get to the delicious food. But it will be well worth the wait. And so we're super excited to have you all here and excited to be in conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, I would like to call on Maria Alni A. Gamble, the Deputy Consul General from the Philippine Consulate General, Los Angeles.
Thank you, Maddie. Professor Stephen Acabado, Director of the UCLA Center for Southeast Asian Studies. Ms. Sylvia Forney, Shirley and Ralph Shapiro, Director, Fowler Museum. Dr. Jason De Leon of the Coatson Institute of Archaeology. Dr. Abel Valenzuela, Dean, Division of Social Sciences of UCLA. Dr. Francisco Datar, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Consul General Adelio Angelito S. Cruz and the Philippine Consulate General in Los Angeles, we welcome all of you, and we are honored to join you this afternoon for the Flavors of the Archipelago exhibit and Batanes Food Stories lecture. The exhibit and lecture are part of the Philippine Studies grant from the Philippine government through the UCLA Center for Southeast Asian Studies. Today's exhibit and lecture remind us that the Philippines is not one flavor, but many. Due to its archipelagic characteristic that gave birth to a variety of food traditions from its coastal areas to its uplands. Despite being separated by countless waterways and mountain ranges, trade and migration enabled the spread of these varied traditions, and these local traditions have created cuisine that is both humble and reflective, as well as ostentatious and bold. We hope that these stories would be especially meaningful to Filipinos who have made Los Angeles home, a city that hosts one of the largest Filipino diaspora communities outside of the Philippines. And as we celebrate the tail end of Filipino-American History Month, it is an opportune time to celebrate Filipino culinary heritage. But let us not stop there. We must recognize as well the people behind these flavors. Of course, the fisher folk, the farmers, the cooks, as well as the storytellers who keep our tradition alive. We wish to thank once again Professor Acabado and his team, Dr. Datar for sharing his expertise, and to everyone who made these events possible. May I take this opportunity to call upon all of us to continue to explore how food can be a powerful tool, not just for sustenance and health, but in bringing people together and forging understanding among nations. Maraming salamat po at mabuhay.
Thank you. And now I will call upon the person who will introduce our speaker, Dr. Stephen Acabado, the director of the UCLA Center for Southeast Asian Studies.
Thank you, everyone. Gandang gabi, good evening. Yes, I'm Stephen Acabado, professor of anthropology, chair of the archaeology department, interdepartmental program downstairs, and director of the Center for Southeast Asian Studies. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Francisco Datar, or Kiko to most of us, and actually prefers to be called Kiko, Pancho, maybe for our Spanish-speaking friends. Kiko is retired, but as I said earlier, he's not tired. Yeah, he's retired from the University of the Philippines Department of Anthropology. He is a biological anthropologist by training, but someone that is grounded in the four-field anthropology approach. He brings together insights from biological, cultural, linguistic, and archaeological anthropology. He earns his PhD in anthropology from SUNY Buffalo and has spent more than 4 decades, almost decades now, teaching, mentoring, and documenting cultures. Philippines. I first met Kiko when I was hired by the Department of Anthropology at UP as an undergraduate student assistant. That year also happened to be one of the hardest years of my life. My dad had lost his job, and I needed to take out the student loan to pay for my college expenses. So I approached the department chair. Can you be a guarantor for my loan? He looked at me and he said, no. He told me, if you don't pay, I'll be the one paying your loan. Then he reached out into his wallet, handed me cash, and said, just pay me when you can. I don't know if I paid him yet. At the time, I also needed a place to stay. Kiko was sharing a house at the UP faculty housing with Professor Celia Antonio. Ma'am Celia offered me her room, and Kiko said, of course, you can stay, but you'll have to read articles every weekend. And over beers, we'll discuss them, the articles. Those nights, reading, talking, laughing became my uh, foundation for anthropology and mentorship. They taught me that anthropology is not just about studying people, but also being part of a community that helps one another grow. I owe much of what I've achieved and potentially I will still achieve from to Kiko and Mamcelia. And maybe, yes, a little to the beer drinking too. So today's exhibit and downstairs and talk are a reflection of the care and generosity that I received from Kiko and Mamcelia. Food, after all, is an archive of our experiences. It carries our stories, our memories, and of course, our connections. Kiko has been documenting food and Philippine cultures, as I mentioned, for over 40 years. This afternoon or this evening, he'll share insights from one of his longest running continuing field projects in Batanes. Before we begin, I'd also like to thank our sponsors, which was already mentioned, the UCLA Center for Southeast Asian Studies, the Fowler Museum, the Coates Institute of Archaeology, the Philippine Consulate General of Los Angeles, the Office of Senator Lauren Legarda, the Senate of the Philippines, the UCLA Rothman Family Institute for Food Studies, and of course the people who make up the UCLA Southeast Asian Archaeology Lab. I'd also like to give a shout out to Nguyet and Bronson who made these things happen by my constant nagging for plans. And events like this happen through community support. So if you'd like to sustain our programming, there's a QR code here in the program. Please scan that and decide if you want to support us, especially supporting student travel, research, and language training. With ongoing funding cuts from the federal government, your support makes a real difference. Thank you, and now please join me in welcoming Kiko.
Okay, today we're going to talk about one of the most important factors for human survival. And it's not, of course, the three-letter word that starts with S, but it's a four-letter word that starts with F. Food. And I would like to introduce the Philippines worldview on food, which is quite different from how Americans view food. In the Philippines, we always say, kumakain tayo para mabuhay, hindi nabubuhay para kumain. No? We eat to live, not live to eat. Although I have a friend in college who would insist that she was born to eat. We are food-loving people. We love feast. We love fiestas. And we are also used to a culture who treats this comment that you're getting fatter, tumataba ka, as a compliment. And pumapayat ka, you're getting thinner, as an insult, which is quite opposite among Americans. I got slapped by a classmate in graduate school when I told her, you're gaining weight. You know? In the Philippines, it's okay if you hire a handyman and ask him, can I pay you some standard? You know? And most of the times, the labor would agree, but never scrimp food on your laborer. That's a major sin. So we are a culture that puts premium on food and eating. If you come to a house, snacks will be always be served, or maybe something to drink. And if you come shortly before a meal, you will always be invited to join the meal. And we are also invited to eat when we pass by a person eating or a group of people eating. Kain tayo. And of course, you just say thank you. And in one of my field areas, this is one of the cultures that would prepare food, especially in fiestas. I mean, overabundance of food, because it would be a shame on the family if there are still visitors and you run out of food. And they even have, well, they cook more than what would be consumed, because the extra food would be sent to relatives going home, or will be sent to Manila for the family members that missed the fiesta. And they even have a term for that, tapgas. And another culture that's, as I said, excessive when it comes to food preparations. You would see pots and pans in Ifugao where you could dive and swim, you know. And that's exactly why, you know, most Ifugao cooks are men. Because you have to deal with a bountiful recipes. You know? And one of the things we characteristically inherent in our culture is that food is an item for sharing. It's always shared. Food is not to be kept within yourself or within a family, but it has to be shared. And it's odd among Filipinos when you go to a restaurant and there were about 4 or 5 of you, and you order food each different from each other. In Philippine restaurants, when you go to you order food for everybody. So how do we treat food and eating in our culture? In English, you have only eat, ate, eaten, eating, eatery. What else? In Tagalog, we say kain. And we did an inventory, and we had more than 90 word derivatives from kain. Just a sample, yeah. but you could do an inventory, you would probably go more than 100 words that would involve the word kain. Yeah, but in spite of this, there are very little studies on food in the Philippines. So this talk will deal with the hypothesis that I have that some Ivatan foods were famine food that eventually became feast food. So my field areas in Batanes, this is about my 31st year in the area. Since 1994, I missed only 2 years without visiting that was in 1999 and 2020 during the COVID. So practically I was in Batanes every year. So this is specifically my field site. Batanes is about 10 or 11 islands depending on how you count. And this group of islands will be closer actually to Taiwan than to the northernmost part of the Philippines. This is my village, not the ghost, but this one. Can we shut off this light? Yeah. So our village is actually this one. Name of the village is Itbud. And one of my former students in this area is here, Mabel, drove several hours. So this is Itbud, the first time I was there. And in 2018 and last year. It's the household. And basically, they are Catholics, predominantly Catholics. More than 95% are Catholics. This is the main street of our village. The main street in preparation for the fiesta. And local folks. I'm going faster so that we could go to the main topic. And they're basically farmers and fishermen. And traditional house. And my favorite area in the house, the traditional kitchen. The Ivatans are basically really good in recycling, and they waste nothing. They waste only the feathers of the chicken and the beak. And so you can see here that even all the innards are being cleaned for consumption. Before we discuss the main topic, I would like you to remember that when we discuss food, this is a product of the interplay of the sea, the terrain, and the typhoon. So food is basically dictated by these three important factors. Some of the feast food. And this is the model I created, constructed, to explain how food follow the different ways towards being a prestige food. So let's say you have the normal times, so there's food stability. A typhoon hits the area. Batanes is constantly hit by at least 8 typhoons a year. And most of the times, they are hit by the center wind. So devastation would always happen. They said that the last 50 years, there are lesser and lesser typhoons that hit the area. But before that, major typhoons would always visit the area. So when the typhoon comes, devastation happens. So there would be a frantic consumption of the food that's left by the typhoon until it's exhausted and period of hunger happens. And famine, of course, occur. They have even a good term for that, maychapteng. And then there will be a resumption of food and the period of recovery going back to normal. So that's basically how the food pathway would occur. And among the different foods in Batanes, I have chosen these 8 different foods. Kasaso, when you have extra meat, when you slaughter a pig, you make a kasasu, you dry it, you salt it, dry it, and smoke it. So when they slaughter pig or carabao or cow, they would also strip the animal, the skin, because the skin is also salted, dried, and smoked, and would be left in the kitchen for ages, until hunger or, would occur. So, kasaso kudit, or the kasaso or the skin, they salt and dry, they hang it, use it to season vegetables. But now, kudit, the skin, when they're drinking during fiestas, they would soak it in water, pound it with hanger, and boil it until it's tender, and it becomes a feast food. Kasaso is now a common fare in Batanes restaurants for tourists. So it has been elevated as a tourist food, traditional food. Tamidok, fern. Fern is all over the farm, sides of the river, edges of the farm, and when they don't have food, they would have tomatoes or canned sardines, gather tamidok, and that's food for the day. So tamidok now is served during fiestas. 10 years ago, you'll never see tamidok salad or fern salad during fiestas because it's a hunger food. And of course, it's a regularly ordered by tourists in the restaurants. Because in Manila is a city, don't have this fern. And it's very expensive in Manila. So, but in Batanes, tamidok as a survival food became prestige food for the tourist. And this marida, this is a terrestrial shell cooked in coconut milk and taro. So you have marida, and these are collected from the forest only at night because they don't go out during daytime. So you have to go to the mountains. So they are usually served during fiestas. And then now it's a very expensive item in the menu in the restaurants in. We usually get this for free, you know, friends would give. Now it's what? 6 pesos per piece. Arayu. It is the prized fish in Batanes. They have all the rituals, all the paraphernalia for fishing. You catch the flying fish first and use the live flying fish, dibang, to catch arayu. And they dry it. They never, well, they used to, but they only eat this after the fishing season. So you have the arayu, and you don't eat it. You could only eat the ice. And then you store it in the kitchen. Smoke would always preserve anything or everything. And then now, in our village, you don't see this dried fish anymore because all arayus are eaten right away. And of course, restaurants serve it. And it's a major gift item for visitors and tourists. Very expensive. So this is taro, and we are particularly interested with this, the dried stalk of taro. They call vunus. They would collect that, braid them into this one, and Ivatan, coming to the US, would braid it and make a foot rug so that it could pass the di ba? So you have a doormat, you know. It's actually food. So this is, when you cook it, or before you cook it, you have to soak it first. So it would last long, you know, the dried taro would last long. And then chop it with spices and meat or fish. So you have the vunus. So you have the dry taro stalk collected and braided, soaked in the water, and then now it's a regular fare for fiestas, feasts, and of course, served as a traditional food for the tourists in most of the restaurants. Lunis. the Ivatan pig are very healthy. They eat sweet potato, yam, and lots of greens. So they're basically healthier than most humans. Yeah. The best tasting pork. So you don't have to worry about your heart disease because they are practically vegetarian. The Ivatans don't normally eat lunis as during the meal, lunis itself. So it's cooked without any spices. They store it in the jars and then covered by its own fat, and it would last for quite a long time. And they only use it, they use the fat, and then they only use it to season the vegetables. But now, they serve it during fiestas and then also serve as traditional food in the restaurants. Uvod. This is uvod. It's part of the banana, and suton is the preferred variety of banana. So it's not the stalk, it's not the leaf, but it's the base of the banana. From the farm, holding the uvod, and then they start scraping it. They usually use a coconut shell with serrated edge to scrape the uvod. If you see collection of the uvod from the farm, it's done by men. Kapay-kudkud or shredding, mostly done by women. And after squeezing all the juice, it's the men's job to mix the meat with the uvod. So this is the cooked uvod. And this is also the first to be cooked during feast, punshot, because this is what you call vunung, and this is the first to be handed out to all that help during the preparation of the feast. And this is how it would look like. Okay, you collect the base of the banana trunk. You could you mix it with fish, pork, beef, or dog's meat. But when you use dog's meat, it's wrapped specially with a particular leaf. So once it's wrapped with it, you know that it's dog's meat. And also became a major food for the tourists, served as their traditional food from the Ivatan. And then we have uvi, Dioscorea alata. When I started doing my fieldwork in Batanes, uvi is the staple. Very few families would cook rice. Only the salaried teachers and the people that work at the municipal hall would have rice. But majority of the people would have uvi as the staple. And these are basically uvi farms. They're really small. And this is the biggest ubi farm I've ever helped plant. This is in 1996. And harvest time, about October and November, and cooking time, and you have the cooked ubi. So I studied intensively ubi production. So I've been in more than 50 planting ubi. And this is the only agricultural product that they have to conduct ritual before starting the planting season. It would require a pig or a chicken. They collect the blood, and all the seedling has to be sprinkled with the blood. So this is very interesting because when I started my field work, we ask children which is more delicious or better, rice or ubi, and most of the kids would say ubi. And that was the 90s. Let's say in 2011, we attended a birthday party of a friend, the son of a friend, and the birthday boy came, and he had about 14 friends with him. So I was observing these kids, and out of the 14 kids, only one took rice. No, took ubi. All the other kids took rice. So these are the kids now that do not appreciate the taste of ubi. So you have famine, you have food shortage still high, food availability starts to rise, and then there's food stability, and then ubi production now is very expensive, so lesser and lesser households would raise ubi. So lesser and lesser field is planted to ubi. So only adults now are craving for ubi. The younger ones don't. So ubi started to appear during fiestas. Older people would ask for ubi. So ubi became a prestige food. And then you have the next generations who do not appreciate ubi anymore. So you have a staple ubi that became prestige food, and then became a fallen angel. So no kids prefer ubi anymore. It is also, I think, because of the employees, the teachers, and the families with money used to eat rice. So if you're poor, the ambition is to be able to afford rice. So instead of planting ubi, they would rather work on the highways as day labor so that they would have cash, so that they would have money to buy rice. So how do I look at it? So Kasasu, Arayu, and Luñis are basically prestige, closet prestige food. But they would appear during famine. Oh, before I forget, I have been following the number of fields being planted to uvi from the very start. So it kind of dwindled until only a few households would plant uvi. When we started, there were families who would plant, let's say, 8 fields planted to uvi. And then up to the point before COVID, most families do not plant uvi anymore. It's expensive, labor intensive, etc. And one thing that COVID did, when I did my survey during COVID times, 100% were planting uvi. So that's one of the good things that happened during COVID. But after COVID, boom. So tamidok and marida could be survival food. Of course, they were. And they rose to being prestige food. So these are the two food that I would consider as classic famine food. Let's say uvi, when everything is down, when everything starts to decompose, the only thing that would remain with the banana stalk would be the base. And they exploited that. Same as the vunus. It's the dried stalk of the taro. So in our area, we just leave them in the field or leave them alone to rot, but not in Batanes. And it became an important source of food, and of course, it became a major dish during feasts. And of course, uvi. So I don't know what would happen to this, but I'm sure that this would be relegated as just another root crop in Batanes. Why? There's a constant ship carrying rice from the mainland. You cannot grow rice in Batanes. You practically don't see any flat areas in Batanes. And they're not rice terrace makers. So these are the agents of change that I consider the major factors that affect food in Batanes. Acculturation is number one. And because of the technology, TV has been in Batanes for quite some time. Cable TV, mobile phones. Kids would rather handle phones than hosts. And of course, internet. They have Starlink there. Batanes used to be zero crime rate. But what would the kid do when they have phones and they don't have money for the load to play ML or so? I already lost 2 phones in Batanes. From 1994 to 2011, I didn't even lose a single peso. And then you have, of course, tourism. Lots of tourists, especially during summer, coming into the islands. And of course, not all tourists are alike. So lots of influences that would. And of course, ships and planes are a major factors for all of these changes. Ships and planes are the major carrier for the gin and for the rice. And I also blame education. Our Department of Education would have a uniform curriculum. And we have what? More than 170 ethno-linguistic groups in the Philippines. Different cultures, different languages, different environment, but one curriculum. So which is a big problem with the kids growing up. So kids now do not go to the farm. Let's say when I started doing my fieldwork in Batanes, you will never see a single kid in the village during Saturdays. They're all in the field. In 1994, we asked a group of kids their concept of happiness, of joy. And they have a uniform answer. Mga dukay. Going to the field. So going to the field was a source of happiness for the kids. But now, you don't see kids in the field anymore. They're practicing chorus or folk dance. So everything is in the school. Because they need to get education so that they could be employed and have good salary. But the traditional culture is neglected by our education. Oh, this is innovation. No birthday party, no feast is complete without the spaghetti. Filipino spaghetti with not tomato sauce, but ketchup. Banana ketchup. And of course, this also started to come out during fiestas, the lumpia. So how do we trace these pathways this food followed to reach its current elevated status? So I did a lot of when I was studying UV production, I did a lot of ethnoarchaeology. But we need archaeology so that we could look at the contemporary cultural practices and see how some flora and fauna transitioned from being survival food to feasting food. So we have lots of archaeologists here, so we could rely on them for maybe questions later. So we would need the help of archaeologists to look into the archaeobotanical changes, study of the seeds, phytoliths, residues, zooarchaeological records, stable isotopes, the C13 and nitrogen 15, and contextual or architectural mortuary evidences of feasting and other material cultures associated with feasting. So there will be a lot of things to do if you want to go into the study of food. And archaeologists had the necessary skills to do that. Let's say this type of feasting, how would it register in the midden of the future? This is one of our excavations. There are two types of burial, and this burial, the dead did not fit into the jar, so the head was exposed, and it was covered by this cooking pot, whose residue showed that the residue were from uvi, from yam. So how would this differ from the open pit burial? So are these the poorer individuals and the one in the burial jars, the richer ones? So we could look at the isotopes to see who are eating more protein and who are eating less protein. And if you want more information, I think we could do a lot of discussions after this. Yay!
Thank you, Dr. Pico, for that very special lecture. For those of you who don't know Pico, he always has his camera everywhere, so it's really nice to see some of the photos he's been taking over his career. But we do have some time for questions that we can take for Dr. Datar. Anyone has questions, comments that they would like to share?
Yeah, I have a question, and I apologize if this was covered. So when the starch grains and phytoliths, I'm curious what the processing tools are that are used. What are besides the shell that you mentioned, the serrated coconut shell, what are the other tools that might be tested or sampled that we might recover the starch grains and the phytoliths? Spoons, okay.
Ladder, the big spoon.
Okay.
Any sharp edge materials they use to scrape the shred the uvi. Yeah, so that would be a good marker for the presence of uvi.
You talked about the uvi and rice and uvi being so important, but during COVID, they changed the growing into uvi and then stopped. Why did it change? What caused?
Well, no ships are coming in, no planes are coming in, so there will be no rice. So they will be forced to plant uvi again until the rice. But I was so happy when I was looking at my survey that everybody's planting uvi again. But right after uvi, boom, COVID, the sudden drop of uvi production. So we have two guys from Batanes here, Kaidian. So, any comment?
Part of the reason why they stopped planting the ubi is for economic.
Yes, yes.
Because cultivating the farms is more expensive.
Very expensive.
Very expensive. The labor cost is very
It's very
expensive.
expensive.
So it doesn't really, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when you only tell the person that you're planting ubi, let's say the following day, and people would come. But you have to feed them and intoxicate them the whole day. So the ubi production became very expensive. So
there was a time when planting ubi or root crops is free labor, because your neighbor, your friend, we got together and we plant in their farm, and then the next weekend they would go to their other friend and they plant. So that's what they call yero, or in English they call it it's like a bayanihan in Tagalog, bayanihan, or in US they call it like, it's like a
cooperative.
cooperative. Everybody works. They go from one farm to another, plant coffee. But now, maybe it's us, our parents, who did not teach us the way. Or things change. So that's what happened.
Becomes a business.
Becomes a business.
Well, cash economy. More of transaction for.
One more question.
Mhm.
So is ubi specific to Batanes or in?
No, it's in Micronesia, Polynesia, and it's an index of wealth in the Micronesia, Polynesia, and you know.
You're probably familiar with ube.
Yeah.
Purple.
Yeah. A purple ubi in Batanes used to be for the pigs only. But they have halaya now. Ubi jam. So
I want to know about like the structure of the food production. Is there a lot of families doing subsistence farming for themselves, or are people like professional farmers, so it's a small subset of the community? And do they own the land that they're planting on?
a family would normally have. The island is small. I mean, among the 10 islands in Batanes, only 3 are inhabited. So the farms are practically small, but let's say 25 meters by 30 meters, about the size of this room. And, family, if they want to plant ubi, all they need to do is to inform a person, and news travel fast. So they would go to your farm, and the belief used to be that the more people who attend to the ubi planting, it would mean more production, more roots. But you have to feed them. You have to, So rice became expensive. Pigs became expensive. Chicken, of course, the most expensive meat in Batanes. The cheapest is beef. So you have beef, you have pork, and you have chicken. So, but now, if you have this size of field, less than an hour, they have lots of people to help. And then the rest of the day would be eating and drinking. So
questions over food and drink, and the reception to follow. So thank you all for those very stimulating questions and discussions, but we have one more speaker for closing remarks. I would like to call on Abel Valenzuela, Dean for the Division of Social Sciences here at UCLA.
Thank you. Very, very happy to be here. And let me begin by saying that I know fully well that I'm the last person between the wonderful lobby full of amazing food, and that you also didn't come here to hear me. And then finally, I want to quickly thank all of you for being here, and especially our coordinators as and organizers. It takes a lot of effort and time to put something like this event together, right? It included an exhibit with lovely photographs and text that helps us better understand the work of Dr. Tatar. And it also brings us together in lots of really unique ways because it's about food, right? It's something super special to come together and break bread, which is what we're going to do, but to then have this space to intellectualize and to talk about food, both in a cultural, historical, economic, way is also very, very special. So let me say that I'm really, really lucky to be in this role, in part because I get to experience many, many different things. And this particular space, anthropology, archaeology, Kotsin, the work of Acabado, many others in this space, is testimony to the strength of UCLA's division in the social sciences. We really do draw from multiple spaces, and it's so good to see colleagues from many of these other spaces. And so I really want to acknowledge and thank all of you for your contributions in this multidisciplinary space. Tonight is really no exception to that. I also want to thank those of you who come from outside of UCLA. Welcome back, some of you, alums, as well as from the consulate. It's hard to get to UCLA on a Wednesday at this time. Lots of traffic, and it's hot today. It's a little bit unfair for it to be so hot right before Halloween, but you know that's Los Angeles. So thank you for being here. The flavors of the archipelago it's a powerful demonstration of how we are committed to forging partnerships that really extend beyond the classroom and, of course, this space. Archaeology, that's what they do. That's what we do. We go outside of the classroom to better understand what's going on, and then we bring that back into the classroom. And so here's an example. I want to give my deepest gratitude to Dr. Francisco Kiko Tatar for his extraordinary dedication, his vision, and for sharing what is a lot of work, 4 decades worth of field work. And we just received a slice, a small, if you will, picture of those contributions. Thank you for your work and for keeping at it for so long. I think it's fair to say that in the social sciences, we really make an attempt to study complex relationships between people, power, and place, and food is integral to understanding that. I also believe that the exhibit really, really captures well how foodways are a part of language, how it also articulates social identities, ritual practices, community values. And this really spans multiple spaces in the Philippines. I think the exhibit also represents the rigorous, globally engaged, and deeply humanistic scholarship that also defines this space and is led by many people in this space. I want to encourage all of our students, faculty, and guests to engage deeply with this resource, certainly in the next hour or so, but after you leave our campus and go home. This space is here for you, and you really should take advantage. Let me not finish by thanking everybody. In specifically, everybody was thanked in the previous comments, and I really do want to finish us, but actually let me go ahead and thank folks, because I think it's quite proper to do that. The Coatson Institute of Archaeology, the Center for Southeast Asian Studies, the Fowler Museum at UCLA, the Rothman Family Institute for Food Studies, UCLA Southeast Asian Archaeology Lab, and also our international partners, the Philippine Consulate General of Los Angeles, the Office of Senator Lauren Lagarda, that of course is from the Philippines. It's really an honor to have you in this space. Thank you, everybody. The food is just right out. It's a big, lovely space. Enjoy.